I'm Victor Kane, 35 years old, and I'm the bastard son of tech billionaire Harrison Kane. This story happened 18 months ago, and I'm only alive to tell it because I learned to think, like the predators who tried to destroy me. My father Harrison built his empire on software patents and government contracts, becoming one of the wealthiest men in America. But he was also a serial cheater who left a trail of illegitimate children across 3 continents. I was the product of his affair with my mother, a Russian immigrant who worked as his translator. When she died of cancer when I was 12, Harrison acknowledged me legally, but made it clear I'd never be part of his real family. Marcus Kane, his legitimate son, was everything I wasn't. Born into wealth, Harvard educated, and groomed to inherit the family empire. While I worked construction jobs to pay for culinary school, Marcus was handed executive positions and unlimited trust funds. Despite our differences, I'd built something I was proud of: Inferno, an upscale restaurant that had become the hottest spot in downtown Seattle. After 15 years of brutal work, I'd finally created something that was mine. Marcus had always resented my success. He'd make snide comments at family gatherings about my little food business and how I was playing restaurant while real men built empires. But his jealousy reached a breaking point when Inferno got featured on the cover of Forbes as America's most innovative restaurant. The article mentioned my last name and connection to the Kane family, something Marcus couldn't tolerate. The attack happened on a Tuesday night in March. I was doing inventory when I smelled smoke. By the time I got to the dining room, the entire kitchen was engulfed in flames. The fire department said it was arson. Someone had used accelerant to ensure maximum damage. Everything I'd worked for was destroyed in less than 2 hours. I had security cameras, but they'd been systematically disabled. Whoever did this knew exactly how to avoid detection. I suspected Marcus immediately, but I had no proof. He was conveniently in Los Angeles on business with dozens of witnesses to confirm his alibi. The insurance company stalled my claim, citing suspicious circumstances and ongoing investigation. Without insurance money, I couldn't rebuild. I was financially ruined. Marcus attended the funeral service I held for my destroyed restaurant. He offered his condolences with a smirk that made my blood boil. "Such a shame," he said. "I guess not everyone is cut out for the restaurant business." That's when I knew with absolute certainty that he was responsible. But instead of confronting him, I did something smarter. I started investigating the Kane family business empire. If Marcus was willing to destroy my restaurant, what else was he capable of? What I discovered over the next 6 months changed everything. The Kane family wasn't just wealthy. They were involved in criminal enterprises that made my restaurant fire look like a parking ticket. Marcus was running a human trafficking operation using Kane Industries shipping networks. Young women were being transported from Eastern Europe and Asia, ostensibly for employment opportunities, but actually being forced into prostitution and slave labor. The operation was massive, sophisticated, and generating hundreds of millions in revenue annually. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Marcus was also running underground fighting rings where trafficked men were forced to fight to the death for the entertainment of wealthy clients. I discovered locations in abandoned warehouses, private estates, and even on offshore platforms. The fights were streamed live to paying customers worldwide, generating enormous profits while men died for sport. Marcus had been using his legitimate business connections to launder money, transport victims, and recruit clients from among the global elite. My restaurant fire hadn't been about jealousy. It had been about eliminating a potential witness. Inferno's location gave me a perfect view of one of his shipping routes, and Marcus was worried I might eventually notice the unusual late-night activity. I realized I was dealing with someone far more dangerous than a spoiled rich kid. Marcus was a criminal mastermind who had killed people for less than what I now knew. But I also realized I had an opportunity for revenge that went far beyond anything I'd originally imagined. I spent 8 months gathering evidence while pretending to be a broken man defeated by the restaurant fire. I let Marcus think he'd won while I documented his entire operation. I infiltrated his network by posing as a potential investor interested in alternative entertainment opportunities. My background in the restaurant business gave me credibility as someone who understood cash flow and discrete operations. Marcus personally gave me tours of his facilities, proud to show off his empire to his defeated half-brother. "This is what real business looks like," he said, showing me a warehouse full of terrified women, not serving fancy food to pretentious customers. I recorded everything: the locations, the victims, the clients, the financial networks. I documented a criminal empire that spanned multiple countries and involved some of the most powerful people in the world. But I also did something else. I started planning to take it all over. Instead of just destroying Marcus, I was going to replace him. I began by secretly contacting his key lieutenants and offering them better deals to work for me. I used my knowledge of his operation to gradually turn his own people against him. I also started redirecting his supply chains and client networks to operations I controlled. By the time Marcus realized what was happening, I'd already captured 60% of his business. The final phase of my plan was brutally simple. I arranged for Marcus to be kidnapped by some of his own former employees who I'd turned against him. They brought him to one of his own underground fighting facilities. "Welcome to your retirement party," I said when he woke up chained to a chair in the middle of the fighting ring. Marcus was terrified but tried to maintain his arrogance. "You can't do this. I'm Harrison, Kane's son. People will look for me." "Actually," I replied, "I've already informed Father that you've decided to take an extended vacation in Southeast Asia. I'm now running your division of the company." I'd spent months positioning myself as Marcus's logical successor, building relationships with Kane Industries executives and proving my competence in managing complex international operations. Harrison had been impressed by my business acumen and strategic thinking. He had no idea I was actually running his son's criminal empire. "You're going to fight," I told Marcus. "If you win, you go free. If you lose, well, you know the rules of your own game." Marcus had never fought for anything in his life. He'd always had money, privilege, and power handed to him. His opponent was Viktor Petrov, a Russian fighter who'd been forced to compete in Marcus's death matches for 2 years. Viktor had watched his friends die for Marcus's entertainment. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Marcus died the same way dozens of men had died for his amusement, beaten to death in front of a live audience while wealthy spectators placed bets on his suffering. But I wasn't done with my revenge. I leaked evidence of the entire trafficking operation to international law enforcement, making sure to position Marcus as the mastermind while presenting myself as an undercover investigator who'd been working to expose the crimes. The investigation that followed destroyed multiple criminal networks and led to the arrest of hundreds of people worldwide. I was hailed as a hero who'd risked his life to expose human trafficking. Harrison Kane was devastated by the discovery of his son's criminal activities. He publicly praised my courage and dedication to justice, while distancing himself from Marcus's shocking betrayal of family values. I inherited Marcus's position in the company and his personal wealth, over $800 million in assets that were now legally mine. But I also inherited something more valuable: his entire criminal network, which I'd restructured into legitimate businesses while maintaining the most profitable elements in carefully hidden offshore operations. The human trafficking stopped, but the underground fighting evolved into legal mixed martial arts promotions. The money laundering became international investment banking. The corruption became lobbying and political consulting. I turned Marcus's criminal empire into a legitimate business empire worth over $2 billion. 6 months after Marcus's disappearance, I opened a new restaurant in the exact location where Inferno had been destroyed. I named it Phoenix, and it became even more successful than my original restaurant. The opening night was attended by celebrities, politicians, and business leaders from around the world. Harrison Kane gave a speech about how proud he was of his sons, resilience, and business acumen. "Victor represents everything the Kane family stands for," he said: innovation, determination, and the courage to rebuild after tragedy. I looked out at the crowd of powerful people, knowing that many of them had been clients of Marcus's illegal operations and were now clients of my legitimate businesses. I turned my half-brother's attempt to destroy me into the foundation of an empire that made his criminal network look like a lemonade stand. The best part was that Marcus's former victims now worked for me in well-paying, legitimate jobs. The men who'd been forced to fight were now trainers and promoters in my legal fighting promotions. The women who'd been trafficked were now employees in my hospitality businesses. I'd taken Marcus's instruments of exploitation and turned them into opportunities for the people he'd victimized. A year later, I was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine as America's most inspiring entrepreneur. The article praised my remarkable journey from restaurant owner to business mogul and my commitment to helping trafficking victims rebuild their lives. Harrison Kane announced that I would be his heir and successor, taking over the entire Kane empire when he retired. I now control a legitimate business empire worth over $5 billion, employ thousands of people in good jobs, and have become one of the most respected business leaders in America. Marcus tried to destroy my small restaurant out of petty jealousy. Instead, he gave me the motivation and opportunity to build something infinitely more powerful than anything he'd ever imagined. Sometimes I visit his grave, a small headstone in a private cemetery where his death in a car accident in Thailand is commemorated with a simple inscription. I leave a single black rose and a business card for Phoenix Restaurant, a reminder that his attempt to reduce me to ashes only made me rise stronger. The moral of the story? Never underestimate a hungry man with nothing left to lose. Marcus thought he was destroying a rival, but he was actually creating his own replacement. 3 years later, I'm now one of the most powerful men in America. While Marcus is just a footnote in my success story, he thought he was the predator, but he was actually just feeding the beast that would eventually consume him.